Okay, the purpose of this video is so that if you missed today's class, you will be able to just watch this and it'll be as if you were there. You should have done all the Java downloads and the jGrasp download, and you should have made a folder according to today's activities instructions named source code, and in that source code folder you should have a folder called chapter 1. So if you don't have all those things taken care of, you got to go back and make sure you take care of all those instructions from today's class activities link. In addition, this page right here is available for download in the today's class activities link. You can print. Just page 1 is really all you need to do because you can get the rest at school when you come back. This is, if you can't print, that's okay. You can still follow along. You can maybe take notes on a separate piece of paper because these will be things that will help you for tonight's assignment, which is 1-1, which is what you should not do until you've watched this video. And so also you should have jGrasp open as well, and you should see jGrasp, which would look like this. Oops, it would not look like that. It would look like this. Alright, so you should have that. Don't worry about what you have on the left side here. You should at least have jGrasp open, and you should have a blank place up here. Now, once you've got all that stuff ready to go, then you continue on here. Remember, anytime that you need to, make sure you pause the video, take care of things you need to, and then you can always come back so as you go on. So here we go. The first thing that we do is we are going to identify the different panes of this jGrasp window, which this is something you can write on your notes, whether it's the page 1 of our notes or if you are on a blank page. This pane right over here is called the left pane, and or it's also called the navigation pane. The reason it's a navigation pane is because this, as you notice up here, we have folders and things that we can go to. You can navigate throughout the computer on here, throughout the folder structure of your computer. So it's a left pane and navigation pane. This pane right here is called it's called the upper pane. So this is the upper pane, and this is the lower pane. And we'll use that terminology as we go through the class, so that way you'll know what we're talking about. Okay. So what I need you to do is to change the size of the panes. Practice doing that. So you can click on this left bar right here and get used to that, and you can make this wider or thinner. So this is important. This is something I do a lot when I'm working on my programs. Go over to this line and practice changing the size there. Again, this is going to make it much easier for you to work on programs, because sometimes you need to see the lower pane more, sometimes you need to see it less, and you need more room up here in the upper pane. When you are going to create a new program, a new class as we call them, you can go to File, New, and Java. So go ahead and make sure you do that. File, New, and Java. And this will allow you then to type. So if you try to type and it's not there, it's because you can't do it. That's because you didn't go to File, New, and then Java. And so if you don't see this one here, then make sure you click on this toggle line numbers right to the left of the red push pin. So click on that so that you can see your line numbers, because that's how we are going to communicate and identify certain lines of code in your program. So we could say, look on line 5, well, it's all identified there. What I need you to do now is to go to on the left side, and somehow you need to navigate so that you are in the chapter 1 folder of your source code folder. And so typically you can use this where I'm pointing to right now, this down pointing triangle, sometimes that helps, especially if you have your source code folder on the desktop. This makes it really easy. If you need to find documents, maybe your source code's in there, then you can still go to the desktop. But I have a Windows machine, and a lot of you have Mac, so you just have to find that source code folder. You have to make sure you know where that is and be able to navigate to it. What you'll want to do, let's say that you see, for instance, now I have a bunch of other stuff, but you can see if I can navigate to it, and so here's my source code folder. Then we open that up, and then we go to chapter 1 and open that up. Okay, and then yours is going to be blank. I have other stuff in it, but yours will be blank, and so that's what you should have. All right, now what's going to happen is we are going to save all the classes that we write that are pertaining to chapter 1 will be saved in this chapter 1 folder. I will have you download some Java files from Canvas, and any of those that pertain to chapter 1 will go into the chapter 1 folder. So that will be important, and having this open in the left navigation pane is going to make it a lot easier for you to save these these files in the correct folder. So we are now in a new Java file, and so what I need you to do is look at your notes here, and whether it's on paper or whether you could only open it up and weren't able to print it, I need you to type all of this. All right, so just type all of this code, and here's some important things before you do this, is that when to indent here, use your tab key. Don't use the space bar. All right, and then when you come to here, you're going to hit the tab key twice. And then whenever you press enter, the insertion point stays on that same indentation, and so the insertion point after line 6 will be right here. Then what you do, you press the backspace button 3 times, or the delete. I guess it's delete in the I don't know if you have backspace in Mac, but anyways, you're going to go 3 times back, and then you're going to press the tab key, the enter key, and you're going to be here, and then you press the backspace key again 3 times to get right to here, and so that will make it more efficient. So go ahead and do that. Pause this, do it, and then come back to the video. Okay, so now you should have your all this typed out at this point, and so now we're going to go through and we're going to talk about saving this. Now, before we get to this, go ahead on your notes somehow is to write down that this is the class header. Now, you don't have to type this. You could type it exactly like what I'm doing in your jGrasp file here if you want, or just write this down, but this is called a class header. This line of code, line 1 in this case, is the class header. The first is called the class name, and that's important because we'll use those terms. The class name is always in the class header, right? And the header, class header is not always the first line on the file, on the document here, but the timeout here. Okay, sorry, I had a little phone call there. And so in here, then we have the class header, and the name of the class is right here. Is always the last word in the class header line. And so what we want to do now is we want to do a save as. And don't click on save yet, but we want to notice, there's a couple things we want to notice. First of all, notice it wants to save it in chapter 1, and that's because you have chapter 1 open on the left pane. If you had chapter 2 open, or you had some other folder open, it would want to save it there, and that's where this will save it. The other thing to notice is that it wants to save it by default as first, which is the name of the class in your code. And so that's the thing to notice, is that it wants to, that's where the class name is, and the class name and the file name must be the same. The class name and the file name must be the same. And so go ahead and click on Save. And so now you have the name of the file right there. There is another thing that I forgot to have you do, and that is that we want to the right here, or we want to indicate that this is called source code. So what you just typed out, all these lines of code are all part of source, what we call source code. And remember, source means the origin of something. So let's say the source of gossip. Who started the gossip? The source of a river. Where does the river start? So this is the origin of the program. It starts with the source code and eventually will produce output on the screen. And so that's what you type as a programmer, is source code. So let's move on here. Okay, now just to demonstrate something else, type a 1 after the word first. And let's do a save as. And this is just to illustrate again that this class name is what it wants to do as far as naming the file. So the name of the file and the class name must be the same. So don't click on save, just cancel. And then the next step, once you write your source code, the next step in the process here is to compile it. And so this green plus sign is going to be what you want to click on. So go ahead and click on that. And we did this on purpose because I wanted to show you that the compiler will find messages that will be errors in the Java language. So Java is a language like English and Spanish and French, and there's certain rules about that language. Well, in this case, this is going to violate one of the rules, and so it says that the class first1, which is what the class name is up here, should be declared or saved in a file named first1. Well, the thing is, it's saved in a file called first. And so the thing is that this then is the reason why it's not allowing you to go on. Now, in this case, now what we're going to do is we're going to debug this. And one way to deal with this is to go ahead and change it back to first. So go ahead and take the 1 off. That's debug, means to fix the error. And then clear. Then another thing I like to do is in these compiler messages, I like to clear them so that it doesn't get confusing later on. And then go ahead and just resave it, or actually we can compile it again. And then you should get a message that says that the operation is complete and there's no error messages with it, and then you know that, okay, yay, I am good and I'm ready to go. Now what should show up when you compile it and it's successful is you should get a file called first, like a .class file. Now I'm going to open this up and I get all these. Now, you don't have to do this, but you'll get a bunch of numbers and things like that, this is bytecode that the computer can understand. So we don't want to open that class, that file. So we just want to leave the .java file, and the .java is what you submit. Don't submit .class files, or you're going to not get points for your submission. So as we move on, now we're ready to run the program. So we click on Run, and we see how that in this Run tab, it's got the output, which is my new and improved first Java application. Okay, so the important thing to note here, this is some more stuff that you can write on your screen, is that this is called output. All right, so you have source code, which is what you write in the upper pane, and output, which is just displayed in the lower pane. And so what you do here, now you notice here that this output comes from these two statements. And the other thing to do here is to label these two lines of code. What they are called is they're called print statements. They're print statements. And so notice it has the word out, and it's printing, and which means to display on the screen. And so this is where you get the output is from your print statements, and that's important to know for tonight. And then you've got to have these other lines to make a program work. So these 5 lines of code must be there to make the program work. You can't just type these print statements and expect to get anything. So the final thing that you need to write down is this, write down that this is the order of events. You start out with the source code, which you write, and then you compile it, and then you debug, which means to fix the errors, and then once all the errors are gone, then you run it, and then running produces the output, which we did, and then you check the output for errors, because you might have made an error in your code that the compiler doesn't catch. You check the output for errors, and if there are errors, then what happens is you would then come back to your source code and fix your mistakes in the source code, which is where you always fix your mistakes, and then go through this whole process again until there are no more errors, everything is good, and then you're done with the program. Okay, so this is how this works, and you will need this for tonight's homework assignment 1-1.